Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we preview the Detroit Lions Week 6 matchup, which has them returning to the scene of Grand Theft Football from a year ago, where the Lions will visit Dallas to take on the Cowboys, who are now on a 2-game winning streak. We'll take a look at both teams and tell you what to expect out of this latest rematch for the Lions this year. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hi, this is Billy Sims, and you listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions, and current Scouting and Training Director of Bull Rush Sports. Coach, good to have you here for this one.
Coach Angers, reporting eligible.
Love it. That sounded like almost like a PA announcer right there, too. So that was perfectly said. Joining Coach and I is the one, the only James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on the Get Around podcast. That drops on Mondays. James, I said the one and only, but anyone that follows football knows there's a James Cook with the Buffalo Bills. So you're like, share a name, but you are the one and only.
I hope to be. I'm not reporting as eligible, though, but I'm going to be in the huddle, and maybe the referee can mix us up.
Brilliant. Well, talk about mixing up. After that mix-up happened, Coach Campbell talked about controlled fury last year, and he was asked about that and what it's like to go back to Dallas this year. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, well, that never really leaves. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for this one. It's and really look, it's the next one in front of us, and. It's a conference opponent, and, they've had our number for a while, and, I grew up down there, so I have a lot of people there. It's just, I think it'll be a special game. So, national television, 4:00, which that's awesome. Early national televised games instead of the late ones.
So, guys, let's start with that. The Lions are returning to Dallas after last year's game, and, is it just me, but it seems like this is the year of the rematch. We play the Rams, we play the Bucks, we play the Seahawks. Now we're playing Dallas, and later we're playing San Francisco. That's a lot of teams from last year. Now, obviously, some were in the playoffs, some were in the regular season, but the Lions are going back to Dallas. So does what happened last year affect how we view this game? James, let's start with you.
Yeah, and it's a homecoming for Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell, who both played in Dallas at various points in their career. So, the ending of that game was just crazy. Luckily, the Lions do not have a Brad Allen's crew in this. They sent him off to England for the early England game on Sunday, so we won't have to deal with that. So that's good. I'm wondering with the over-under on how many times the PA announcer has to say that someone is reporting as eligible.
That will be interesting to keep an eye on, and to wonder, what the reaction is going to be like, because that's probably going to make it loud for the offense, because we already know Dallas was probably going to be loud on their defense when the Lions offense is there, when the eligible thing happens. Heck, it would be hilarious if the Lions just did the same thing this year and tried the exact same play on them. But not expecting that to happen. Coach, what are we expecting? How does something like this affect players and coaches? Is it similar? Is it different? It's a different season. What's the psyche on this?
Well, that comes up, of course, and it's they got a game stolen, but it made them a better football team. So I think that's going to help their psyche a little bit. It's been circled. I think the biggest thing about this, it's going back to Dallas, lost a heartbreaker, but now we're back there again. Okay, it's a road game we need to win. It has playoff implications we need to win. When was the last time we beat Dallas in the regular season? We need to win. So all those things come into play. Have they talked about it? Have they brought it up? Have they said anything? I'm sure they joked about it. I'm sure a couple times in practice this week, if Skipper is going to report eligible, he probably came running on the field. I'm eligible, and they're laughing about it. But, it's there. But just like Dan Campbell said, it's just another one of those. There's so many things against us in this game that we want to change the title. Instead of losing on a bad call, we want to say we went in and won on a great call on the road. So I think that's their focus right now.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about Dallas and how they're different from last year and how they've done so far this year. They started 3-2 with a win over the Steelers on Sunday night. That makes them 3-2. They've lost to the Ravens and Saints. They beat the Browns and the Giants. Now, straight up, there were two teams. First off, I'm not that impressed with Dallas this year. Their wins, all right. Their loss to Baltimore was close, so that might be something. But I want to throw a little caution out there. This offseason, there were two teams that I thought got worse, and those teams were the Cowboys and the Bills. But both of those teams have winning records right now, and I do think Buffalo's better than Dallas at this point. But those are two teams that I didn't think got better, yet they have winning records, and so. Let's see. What are we expecting out of the Cowboys? All right. They might be gaining some momentum, but they've got injuries like everybody else. So, James, start us with that because there's some names on that injury list that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, their defensive line in particular is pretty decimated. There's a pretty decent chance that Micah Parsons doesn't play. He's their Pro Bowl, Sam linebacker edge guy that just creates havoc. DeMarcus Lawrence is out for the game. They lost Sam Williams to a season-ending knee injury during training camp. He was one of their ends who was going to play a lot. One of their other defensive ends, Marshawn Nealand, who their second-round pick from Western, avoided what they thought was a season-ending injury on Sunday night, but is expected to be out for like about a month. So there's 4 bodies gone from that defensive line. So it is pretty depleted. At this point, their left tackle, Tyler Guyton, who's their first round pick from this year. He's a 6'8", 322-pound monster that they took with the pick that the Lions gave them in the Terry and Arnold trade when they traded back. He's day to day, but he's kind of struggled a little bit as a rookie anyway. So they may get some guys back in the secondary with Kalen Carson, who's a rookie corner, who's been playing a lot for them, and Pro Bowler Deron Bland is possible to play. I guess he's going to be very limited in practices this week, and maybe be able to play this weekend. But I don't know if he's going to have a full pitch count if he does. And this would be his first action of the season, for their Pro Bowler there.
That's a lot of injuries, and it's a reminder to people that, hey, the Lions aren't the only team facing injuries, and other teams have even more. And I did hear the Cowboys signed needing edge pass rushing help. They signed KJ Henry off the Bengals practice squad, and there's a chance he could be ready this week. There's a guy that goes in there as well. I think he was drafted by the Commanders a couple years ago. And so they're trying to bring in some help there. Brandon Cooks is out, of course. And so, Coach, the Cowboys, they've got these injuries. They're a team that we didn't think got better in the offseason, but they have a winning record. What are we expecting out of Dallas?
It's Dallas. I mean, that's the biggest thing to say. It's the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, we're going to. They were the Americans team. They still believe they are. They're still playing at home. The injuries, again, we see injuries all over. We've seen them in how many games this year? 4 games for us this year. We were banged up a little bit last week. Seattle was banged up last week. We pulled it out. It's still guys trying to make the squad. We talked about that. Those 2 deep, 3 deep guys. Those are the guys you got to worry about because they're trying to get the first team. They know they're 1 rep away. And now that they have that 1 rep away where they're playing, now they're going to make sure they play to their best of their ability so that they don't lose those reps. Dallas is great, got a great home record. Other than this year, I think they've lost 1, maybe 2 this year. Let's talk about that Ravens game. They were down 19 points in the 4th quarter and came back and ended up 28-25. They completed an onside kick. They tried another onside kick and almost got it. They had the Ravens scared. Dak is a winner. CeeDee Lamb is a winner. Those guys want to play. Those guys are good. Their corners are good. And so I think that's the thing is they don't want to go to 500. They don't want to lose another game at home. Home field advantage, right? You win 8 games or 9 games at home, you're in pretty good shot to make the playoffs. So, all that stuff's going to come into play. And again, however the injuries are, that's what happens.
All right, now, Coach, Dak Prescott, there's no doubting his abilities. And when you start looking at his stats as well, over 1,400 yards passing, twice as many touchdowns as interceptions. CeeDee Lamb's a big reason for that. But Jalen Tolbert has stepped up quite a bit in the absence of Brandon Cooks, and they got the tight end Jake Ferguson. Now, Coach, you've been looking at some film on the offense. What are you seeing out of this passing attack? Which, if I might add, the passing attack is second in passing yards. The offense is 12th in total yards. What are you seeing out of the Cowboys passing attack?
Dak's a good quarterback. He doesn't get he is a good quarterback. I breaking him down. You can't read his eyes because he's going to look you away. He's going to take a shot. If he's in trouble, he's going to make sure he gets rid of the ball so that he doesn't get a sack. Tolbert stepped up. Turpin stepped up. CeeDee Lamb's, he is a dog. We know that. He torched us last year for 2-something. That was also, he had a 99-yard broken play. But we go back to that play. Dak should have been sacked in the end zone. We missed him. He scrambled around, found the wide open receiver. He did the same thing last week against Pittsburgh. They didn't look good. They won. Those guys are competitive. They're competitors. They're going to do whatever they have to do to win. Offensively, we can, strategic, we can go through exactly what they're doing and stuff. But, if they see something on offense upstairs, guys in the headsets upstairs, quick slant, a freaking deep out, they're coming right back to it on the next play. Might be a different receiver. Okay. But they are not going to, if you're going to give them the quick slant, they're going to come back at you with it. So, good coaching staff, great players, a lot of tradition. And we're our backs are against the wall. We're on the road.
Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts for the power, performance, and reliability of a new Superstart battery. Visit O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Okay, and James, I said they were 12th in total yards, but second in passing. And I had to look up the rushing, and they're second from the bottom in the league in rushing, which I know doesn't surprise you because you and I talked about this in the offseason. When they brought in Dalvin Cook and Zeke Elliott, it was like, if that was 3 or 4 years ago, that's a big deal. But they've got an emergence of this last week of the play of Rico Dowdle, who had 20 carries for 87 yards. Is he going to help change this rushing attack? What are you seeing out of the Cowboys offense?
Well, they've been splitting carries with him and Zeke Elliott like the whole season. They just kind of have started giving Dowd a little bit more of that share the last couple of weeks. But they still have had a running back go over 50 yards only once this season, and that was last week when Dowdle did it. The Lions have had somebody 75 or more in every game this season and 2 in one game. So their running game has been pretty anemic this season. Zeke Elliott is a shell of his former self. Dalvin Cook, I think we know, is as well. They haven't brought him up from the practice squad yet. And interestingly enough, for as much as they've lost other receivers and everything, I thought that CeeDee Lamb was going to be a target hog and they would just throw the ball to him 15 times a game. And he doesn't have a 100-yard game yet. He's too good of a player to not have a 100-yard game this far into the season. So their offense is pretty interesting. I mean, they basically don't have hardly anybody ranked in the top 30 at their position in PFF. Only a few. Ferguson and Dak and their 2 guards, and that's about it. The Lions are just peppered with people who are rated at that high in there. So, on paper, this doesn't look like a close matchup.
Coach, did you want to add anything else on the offense before we switch over to the defense? Because, James, I'm echoing a lot of those feelings right now. The offense of the Cowboys doesn't look like the offense from a year ago.
No, I agree. They're the running game sets up the passing game. It's funny when I'm looking at it, I'm going, man, that looks like the Lions out there with their formations, where they're going 12 personnel, they're running the trip set, they're running motion. And I think that's a big thing. A couple games this year that I only watched 3 of them. I think they started out throwing a quick out or a little screen, little flare pass to start the game to get Dak's feet wet. They're using CD as a decoy out of trip sometimes. They're running him at the point. He's running down the field. They're trying to get the under route. They did some, they do some good stuff with motions and coming across and kind of switching out of a trip set. I'll make some. I've got some videos. I'll post on those that to get people open. CD got upset last week because the ball was underthrown. CD got upset, in our game or I think it was in the Ravens game because the ball was underthrown. He's always voicing his opinion. We know that last year CD was upset. He complained and everything, and then he went on a freaking 12-game tear and just tore the league up. So I think they're going to start targeting him, and I think they're going to try to do it with us. And they're running a lot of mesh situations to try to free him up. The Ravens did a good job of switching and baiting, and we have to disguise our coverage in that situations. Dak's going to look at him in critical situations like we talked about, whether it's a deep out or use those receivers in a quick slant, things like that. So again, I agree. They don't look like they've looked in the past, but they're still winning football games. They're still 3-2, and I think that's one of the things that we have to look for. We have to get under Dak, not under Dak's skin as much as CeeDee Lamb's skin. We have to get into his head and make Dak start looking other places. Now, Ferguson, he is a dog. He's good, man. They threw a back shoulder throw to him. They ran a 3 takeoffs out of trips, and it hit him on a back shoulder throw and a seam route. He's kind of turning into his go-to guy, kind of Laporta is for us. And so those are things we have to do, and hopefully AG's got something to disguise. But yeah, it's funny. They're putting CD in the backfield. They ran a reverse with him. They're doing all those different things. And he's pretty lazy if he's not catching the football. I'm being honest with you. I'm watching some run plays where he takes 2 steps and stops. So he gives us some pretty good clues on what's going on from the opposite side. So that's it with that. But I just think we just have to be able to get CD upset and get under Dak's skin a little bit and negate Ferguson.
Well, let's talk about that other side, the Lions defense. I expect Dallas is going to face a more formidable Lions defense than a year ago. Lions right now, 22nd in yards allowed, 27th in passing yards, 4th in rushing yards, 10th in points allowed. James, I know it says we're 27th in passing yards, but with the Lions' rush defense being so good already and Dallas's rush offense not being very good, and knowing we've got a very different looking secondary than we had a year ago, what are you expecting out of the Lions defense against the Cowboys?
Yeah, I think part of the reason exactly why the Lions pass defense is rated so lowly is because their run defense is so good that a lot of teams just go there. I mean, I would too. You got DJ Reader and Lee McNeil. They're both ranked in the top 10 among all defensive tackles. Hutchinson is the #1 defensive end, according to PFF. And then Levi is ranked 34th, surprisingly, among defensive ends.
Wow.
So, the Lions defensive line has just been killing it against the run this year. So why wouldn't teams throw the ball, especially when you've got a rookie out there? Why not test him? So I wouldn't be surprised if they do that, and like Jerry said, Lamb went off last year on the Lions. He had that 199-yard play, but Derek Barnes isn't on the field this time.
Yeah, well, there were so many things going on in that play, and Kindle Vildor was there as well, and there was more luck. I'm just gonna say there was more luck than skill on that play. There was a lot of skill, but there was some luck involved because the Lions. That's one of those things where it's just a small amount of error, and that's what it was, and it was a highlight, but it didn't say the whole story of the Lions defense.
For sure.
Coach, let's any thoughts on the Lions defensive scheme? What are you thinking Aaron Glenn might do with this situation, knowing that CeeDee Lamb hasn't had a huge game yet, but he is their most potent offensive weapon? You talked about them moving him around. You talked about Ferguson. How do you think Glenn might play something like this?
Well, I think let's go to the passing, what's happening in our passing yards first. I want to touch base on this because this is something we got to think about. We went against Geno Smith, lights out, best game he's ever played. We played Baker Mayfield, upset because his last pass the year before was an interception to Barnes. and he wanted to get back. We played Matthew Stafford with almost a full group in the beginning of the year, and we played Geno Smith without Brian Branch. Okay, Brian Branch is back. The reason I'm bringing that up is our defensive pass coverage is totally different with Brian Branch off the field. And I think those are things that we have to see. So this week, I'm really looking forward to this. I think David, you saw what Davis did last week against the Neanderthal, the second biggest wide receiver of all times behind Kelvin Johnson. And Davis had a great game. And I think you're going to see him on getting in CD's melon a little bit. Ferguson's going to have a tough time. Last year, I watched Branch covering Ferguson on a seam route. And Branch, he's gone, and the next thing you know, he's in the middle of it, and his hand's knocking the ball down. The Branch is good, man. I watch more and more film of this guy, and I'm just like, holy cow! So I think that's the biggest thing with him, and I think they'll put Arnold on CD a little bit just because he's so handsy. And you know what? That's gonna piss CD Lamb off. It's gonna make him mad. So I'm not concerned with it. I think the Ravens had a great job in their pass rush system against Dallas, but they don't have Hutch, and I think Hutch with what Levi's doing, what Pascal's doing, what McNeil's doing, what Reeder's doing, what Wingo's going to be doing, what our guy coming off the edge, I think those are going to get him into that. So, and with our man coverage, it's going to be much better off. And I also think we adjust better in man coverage than what the last year, where we were getting picked on those crossing routes, where this year we are smarter and we're overplaying them and working ourselves, giving ground to gain ground. That's an offensive lineman term, but it's the same thing with the defensive backs. They're giving ground to gain ground to get over top, so there's not, the pick play. So I'm really looking forward to this game with our defense.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Carlton Davis out there. I think that's a big one you hit right away. Is he is more talent. He raises the room. You look at everybody on our team last year in the secondary, and Carlton Davis is above everybody that was on our roster last year as far as outside defensive backs go. And so that is going to change things as well. And he's not a rookie. He's got that veteran ability in him to maybe play those games with CD Lamb. And like you said, you saw him stand up to DK Metcalf. So I'm expecting more of the same. James, anything else you're expecting out of the Lions defense against the Cowboys offense before we flip the sides around?
No, I don't know that they have to do anything fancy in this game. I think that they have the advantage in personnel. So I don't know that they will, but they're going to add some wrinkles. They always do. And they've had an extra week to prepare this game. I guarantee you that in practice, they've let the players come up with one fun trick play that they're probably going to hold in their back pocket to spring on Dallas.
Very, very possible. And again, you mentioned that we're not going to have Barnes out there, which is a big loss on defense. Campbell was asked about Trevor Nowaski helping out the Sam position, and he admitted, they're happy to have Nowaski back, and that's a guy that they've looked at a little bit. He also mentioned it's likely going to take a group effort to fill in for that spot because Barnes was such a unique individual. Fortunately, the Lions have a good amount of depth. They actually added some. They signed 2 more linebackers to the practice squad this week, letting a couple guys go from the practice squad. But let's turn over to the other side of the ball. The Lions are going up against the Cowboys defense. The Cowboys defense ranks 15th in total yards, 11th against the pass, 24th against the run, and 24th in points allowed. So, what are we expecting out of the Lions this week? First off, they're coming off the bye. You mentioned that they should be rested, which, by the way, why doesn't every division have the bye week one division at a time? Like all 4 teams in the same division have a bye week. Wouldn't that just kind of make everything very, very smooth? And, hey, they didn't get an advantage over the other team in their division. Because we will be going to Minnesota, a divisional game after they're on their bye and whatnot. But I'm just throwing that out there. I think it would be good to have every team on their bye. But the Lions will be rested. Branch and Ragnar are back practicing. Coach, what are you thinking out of the Lions offense going up against that defense?
Well, having Rags back is huge. I think, the Ravens just ran them over in the first half in that game. Pittsburgh had some success too. Of course, the Ravens have a 300-pound fullback and a 255-pound running back, so that helps, and a quarterback that runs too. But so I think we'll be able to establish the run in that situation. Dallas still has pretty good corners, but our passing schemes and stuff like that, we're going to put a lot of pressure on them. Are we going to establish a run first and go to the pass? We're going to establish a pass first and go to the run, or vice versa. We are so balanced in what we can do. We can go 12 personnel, 11 personnel, 13 personnel, and choose what we want to do. I think you're correct. I think we're going to see a trick play somewhere in there, just because they love popping them out. I think it's Dallas has to worry about that. Dallas is coming to this game going, who are we going to stop? Who are you going to stop with the Lions? You're going to stop the deep ball to JMO? You're going to try to stop Laporta? And then of course St. Brown's going to get his thing, and then we won't even talk about our running backs because I think they're pretty good too. So I saw Campbell had talked about Gibbs is about to have a breakout game. He hasn't had that breakout game. I mean, he's good. He's done some great things, but he hasn't had that huge splash play like he did against Tampa last year. I think when he took it to the house and threw their all pro safety on his back as he went into the end zone. Not that I remember that play at all. So I think there's probably something designed for Gibbs this week, just because Campbell brought that up, and those usually deter. One other thing I want to talk about real quick on that, the bye week. The bye week is time to rest, but it's also the time to maybe put in some things for the following week. Not the Cowboys, but the Vikings, because you still have your full week for the Cowboys to practice, where you have 1 or 2 extra days. So really the bye week is not a bad time as a coach. The guys get rested. You can put some things in. They're not telling them. They're probably telling them they're going to put them in for next week, but whatever they put in this week during the bye early part is probably going to be happening against the Vikings, and they'll already have it in the playbook, just from a coaching standpoint.
That is a great insight there, Coach. Yeah, I love hearing those insights, the things that the average fan or average reporter might not know about. And that makes sense. You got the extra time, you're preparing ahead. And obviously you're not just taking a few days off. This is the time where the Lions talked about doing this self-scouting last year, halfway through the season. And they were probably doing some of that as well. James, what do you expect? You think they're going to, you already mentioned all the skill pieces the Lions have. You expecting the running game to get going strong? What are you expecting out of the Lions? They're 4th in yards, 7th in passing, 6th in rushing, super balanced, and then they're 7th in points scored. So what are you thinking you're going to see from the Lions offense, or what are you hoping to see?
I think you'll see them establish the run off the get-go. It's the weakness of this Dallas defense so far, is they've been giving up a lot of yards on the ground. They've been giving up a decent amount of points. The amount of pass yards they've been giving up is kind of middling. And the one thing that the defense really does well is they get picks. So Jared Goff is going to have to be careful when they do throw the ball.
Good to be aware of, because that makes sense. Get that running game going so that you can wear down the defense, and interceptions can change games in a hurry. We've seen that. We saw that last year in multiple games. So we want to keep that down. I am hoping that with the bye week, that's just that much more time for Tim Patrick to grow his role. Loving what we're seeing out of him. Coach Campbell talked about him and Allen Robinson, and how he's happy to have both of those guys on the squad. And I think you're going to continue to see the role grow, but it's not going to he's not going to become the number 1 or number 2 receiver, but he's going to grow that role and serve a very vital part for what the Lions need him to do. All right, guys, let's hit any other storylines, anything unexpected going on. Let's start with Decker reported last year. Is there a noise when Decker comes in or Skipper comes in? James, what are you expecting? And then, Coach, what are you thinking is going to happen? Anything's going to happen? I know somebody asked I think they were asking Campbell if he was going to have one of them report on the first play, and Campbell politely said they hadn't worked that far out yet. But what are you expecting out of anything here?
I just think they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and if something comes out or one of those plays come out, it comes out. But I think that's something we as fans want to keep bringing up, we started the show off with it. It's funny. I'm thinking about it. So I don't see anything crazy on that. I think the Lions are going to go, we're going to make sure we follow the rules exactly on this one. We know that no matter what we do in this game with that reporting, we're not going to get a penalty on it because there's no way the NFL wants to deal with that again. And that's my 2 cents.
I think your 2 cents makes a lot of sense on that one, Coach. James, you gonna be paying attention to the reporting, or I agree with Coach. It's kind of a fun fan thing, even if the coaches aren't, focused on it because they've got other things to look at. But what's your perspective?
Well, if it was the same refereeing crew, I think it would be hilarious if the Lions just did it all the time. But it's going to be a totally different crew. So I don't know how much they'll do it. They'll probably do it once or twice, I think, just to get some kicks out of the team and stuff. There should be a decent amount of Lions fans at this game too, so you'll hear it if it happens. You'll hear the stadium.
That makes sense, and yeah, I mean the Lions do that as a natural part of their game plan on a regular basis as well. But James, you brought the reffing crew. You've done a little look into this. Tell us a little bit more about the reffing crew research you've done.
Yeah, they've got John Hussey's crew. Fans will recognize him. He's been a head referee since 2015 in the NFL. Interesting statistic about his crew is that they've actually called more penalties on the home team in their 4 games that they've done so far. 26, 18 for the away team. And they've only called 2 pass interference calls in 4 games. So that's interesting. They called 10 false starts, 9 offensive holding, and 6 unnecessary roughness, though. It's an interesting crew. The amount of calls that they have made throughout the season has pretty steadily increased. So that's maybe kind of a point for alarm. They called 16 penalties in the first 2 games combined, and then 13 and 18 or 13 and 15 the last 2 weeks. So the same crew has done it 3 games in the last 2 years of the Lions too. The Lions Vikings game last year, or Lions Kansas City and Denver at Detroit last year, and then the Lions Vikings the year before that.
Okay, well, I like that they haven't called a lot of pass interference penalties. That could be good.
That bodes well for Terry and Arnold.
Yes. Another other storyline just to mention, as we know, the New York Jets have let their head coach Robert Saleh go. Again, that's a guy that many people were hoping might become the Detroit Lions coach back when that coaching cycle went through. Of course, that didn't happen. The Lions got Dan Campbell. I think that worked out pretty well. And ultimately, out of the 7 coaches hired that season, only 2 of them are still head coaches today. Obviously, Dan Campbell being one of those. And that's just kind of crazy to see how all that goes. Nick Sirianni, he's the other coach as well. That was hired in 2021. So 2 out of 7, you got to be doing something good to keep the job in the NFL at head coach. And I think we all know how great of a job Dan Campbell's doing.
Yeah, there's rumblings about Sirianni in Philadelphia, so Campbell could be the last one standing.
You got something, Coach?
Yeah, you know what? I want to touch real quick before we get into that. Special teams, okay? We kind of, that's a third of the game. Coaching's coming out in me. Aubrey is 14 of 16 this year. Okay, he's 14. He's hit a 65-yarder. All right, Anger, their punter is averaging 51.1, and Turpin has had average 20. I think he's got a punt return for a TD, and he's averaged almost 20 yards per return. So we have a pretty good special teams too. But these are something that could come down. We don't want to have only a 2-point lead or only a 3-point lead late in the game, because Aubrey's going to bang that thing. And they're maybe thinking the same thing about us, because we can see if Bates can make that. So this should be an interesting thing. One of the things I did when I coached was hidden yardage chart. Okay. And that was the hidden yardage chart is you guys, we always broke down special teams, kick off, kick return, punt return, and stuff like that. And if we won that hidden yardage chart, if we're plus on that, we usually won a football game. And so I think this part of the game is going to come into play. I really do. I think it's going to come into play. We have to make sure we keep Turpin in front of us, and we have to make sure we keep Aubrey outside of 70 yards.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up because we often overlook the special teams aspect, even though we have a pretty good special teams team or group ourselves. I mean, Coach Phipps amazing in what he does, and we have a punter, a really good one. I still go back to I was so happy we re-signed him, not just because of how good of a punter he is, but the fact that he was a high school quarterback gives us that extra dimension on the fake ability of punts that is it's priceless. And then we're still waiting to see that range. We're seeing Jake Bates on field goals, but they've all, I think, been within 40. And Campbell even talked that they were hoping to just get him close enough to attempt a super long one recently. It just didn't work out. And you're right, both teams could have a role in special teams. So let's see, what's it going to take for the Lions to win this game? My first thing, avoid penalties and run the ball. Because avoid penalties, that creates bad situations, out of nothing. And then if they can run the ball, they can get that time of possession. And so I think that's going to be – I'm going kind of off what James said. I don't think the Lions have to do anything too fancy or too special necessarily on defense. Just kind of play the solid defense. James, what are you seeing? What's it going to take for the Lions to win this game?
Yeah, I can really see them grinding this one out. If they just let their personnel is better than Dallas's personnel at this point, I think, and it's not particularly close in the NFL. It usually kind of is, where you can just say, okay, we're going to walk into the field and we're the better team. In this game, it kind of looks that way, which is a scary feeling almost as a Lions fan because, but I just see the Lions wanting to run the ball, establish a lead, get a big lead, and don't let any refereeing at the end be a possibility to decide this game.
All right, as much as I think all three of us are thinking the Lions have more personnel at a higher level, Dallas is still only a 3-point underdog in this game. It's a 3-point spread. And like Coach, you said, we're still going into Dallas. Again, I wanted this game in Detroit so bad, but it's not. Next year we get them in Detroit. But Coach, it's in Jerry's world. So what are you thinking? What's it going to take for the Lions to win this game?
Well, first of all, it's +7 for Dallas going in. It's a road game, so you got to give them a touchdown. That's why the 3-point thing is there, I believe. I think the biggest thing is no splash plays by CeeDee Lamb, no 99-yard pass plays. I think we have to eliminate them believing or getting that splash play. And either, they're going to gain their yards. CeeDee's going to have some catches. Turpin's going to get, Tolbert's going to get, Ferguson's going to get. We know that. Running back, we should be able to shut that right down. So the big thing is and then once Dak uses his feet and his eyes very well, and we don't want Dak running for a first down. And if he gets out of the pocket, we want to make sure he doesn't have a clean vision of who he's going to throw to. Those are the things. If we can eliminate those, we should be in pretty good shape. And then offense wise, again, establish who we are, do what we do, grab a lunch pail, put a hard hat on, let's go to work.
All right. Well, this is the beginning of a 5-game stretch where the Lions go to Dallas and they go to Minnesota. Then they host the Titans before they hit the road again for the Packers and the Texans. And we know there's no room for error in the NFC North. It's virtually non-existent. If you look in the NFC, the math I did quickly is there are 9 teams with a winning record. And how many of those teams are in the NFC North? 4, because that's all the NFC North can hold. And so it's an important game. The Lions, every game's important this year. The room for error is so slim. And so, and it's an NFC game, even though it's not a divisional game. So let's get to predictions. Again, folks, we don't always predict who's going to win. We all think, and you guys disagree with me if I'm speaking for you, you don't agree. We think the Lions are capable of winning every game this year. So we're not going to say who's going to, Lions are going to win. Maybe they will. We think they will. They should win. They could win, right? But we're going to kind of go a little bit more specific. What do we think is going to happen in this one? James, let's start with you. Give me a prediction you have for this game.
The Lions cover that 3-point spread, and I think win by more than that. I'm hoping at least a touchdown.
All right. Coach, how about you?
I believe long as we do what we do, and we don't give up those splash plays, this game should be close to being over. 4 or 5 minutes left where we run the clock out for the victory. I definitely think they're going to beat the spread in the situation on that. But, we're definitely going to outrush them. We're definitely going to outpass them. And defensively, long as we can hold them to less yards than we do, I think we're going to be in great shape. And we will win the turnover battle.
All right. I think the Lions should have won last year. I think they were the better team. And I think the same thing this year. I think they are, again, the better team. But it's going to have to take them running the ball well. I think that's going to happen. I'm expecting them to win the time of possession in this game as well, because I don't think Dallas will run the ball well. I think the secondary is going to get tested in this game because Dallas will be throwing the ball a lot. And so those are my predictions, and I'm expecting at least one interception by the Lions defense in this game. All right. Before we get out of here, Coach, any final thoughts you want to share with us?
Nope. Just can't wait to watch the game on Sunday.
All right, James, how about you?
Same. Hoping that that we got a Tigers moving on to the ALDS by that time.
Yeah, they are going to Game 4, leading 2-1 against Cleveland. Would love to see them clinch it on Thursday. And folks, maybe by the time you're listening to this, that game's already over, and hopefully it ended with a celebration there in Comerica Park. So the Gritty Tigers joining the Gritty Lions. It's a fun time in Detroit right now, and Red Wings are starting up their season here on Thursday, I think, right?
Yep.
So, all right. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Like, subscribe, comment on socials. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.
When you visit Arizona, time is measured in moments, not minutes. Like the moment your work stress disappears as you kayak through the canyons. Or the moment you discover the life-changing effects of prickly pear chocolate. But nothing beats the moment you see the Grand Canyon for the very first time. Visit a new state of mind. Learn more at hereyouareaz.com.
O'Reilly.
Need a little help? O'Reilly Auto Parts can help. Need advice? We've got advice. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Exceptional customer service. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.